Okay, the final quarter-final at the Women's Euros between France and Germany has just concluded. Following a penalty shootout, there's been a lot of controversy in this game. There's been two penalties in regulation time, two goals disallowed for offside. Germany were down to 10 players after just 13 minutes of play. We obviously had the full extra time. Finished 1-1 at the end of normal time. Germany have won 6-5 on penalties, and there's a lot to dissect out of this game. A lot to dissect. Now, France, I mean, they have fluffed this. They've had two goals ruled out for offside. The first one, you could argue the first one they've had ruled out for offside. I mean, again, we need common sense with the offside rule. To be a toe offside, to me, that is not an attacker taking advantage. The benefit of doubt should go back to the attacker. I think we're too black and white in regards too rigid with the offside rule, and I think some of the interpretation, I mean, we need a bit of common sense, in my opinion, about the interpretation of offside. And I understand with VAR, but I think we need to have a clear and obvious gap between attacker and defender. Now, the second goal that's ruled out for offside, yes, absolutely, the player is offside, impedes the goalkeeper. That one absolutely is a correct decision. Common sense would have applied there. But the other offside goal, for me, no. We need common sense to apply. We'll discuss that. But the real controversy starts with Hendrick getting sent off for a hair pull. Now, you're going to see this offence more likely in the women's game than the men's game because more female players obviously have long hair in ponytails. Although you do have the occasional male player with a bit of a mullet. You rarely see a hair pull in the men's game. But it is a brain snap by Hendrick. It is a penalty. I mean, it's stupid. It is stupid. Now, because it's deliberate foul play, under the letter of the law, it is a red. It went to VAR. It was, given as a red, sent off. Second red card for Germany in the tournament in consecutive games, which is leading to problems defensively. They're running out of defenders. They're either injured or suspended. They've gone through 4 right backs so far in the tournament. They're running out of defensive players because they're getting injured or suspended. And again, a silly red card, poor discipline by Germany has hampered them in this tournament. If that's an area that they need to improve on against Spain, it is definite because they cannot afford the amount of bookings because Nushkin is now suspended as well, so you've got a couple of players suspended for the next game because Nushkin gets a yellow when she was already carrying a yellow into the game. Now, the resulting penalty from that red card is Georio slots the penalty. Is it the best penalty? No, Berger does get a strong hand on it. Another day she could potentially push that over the bar. But that's the penalty slotted on 15 minutes. And at this point you're thinking, okay, Germany, player down. What happened against Sweden is they fell apart. They completely had a mental breakdown. They collapsed, had a player sent off, and it started to look really worrying how Sweden just put goal after goal in. Germany held on. They didn't completely collapse. And France got sloppy. They were on top before the penalty, but they got sloppy, they got wasteful. They were having all the possession, they're building all these phases, but they got sloppy. And they conceded a real sloppy corner from a long ball. And Nushkin, with a brilliant header, scores the goal on 25 minutes. So the France only led for 10 minutes. So Nushkin equalises. And Germany showed a lot of energy. As soon as that equaliser goes in, Germany showed a lot of energy. They were closing down, tackling, making it scrappy, but they had energy. They were competing for the 50-50s that they weren't doing in the first 10 to 15 minutes. But at the same time, while Germany are showing a lot of fight, they still look a bit wobbly defensively, and they have shown some wobbly signs defensively in this tournament, even though they got through the group stage. That game against Sweden, they were dismantled defensively. Tactically, they were all over the place. Open play when the ball turned over, they looked very vulnerable. They didn't look vulnerable in flowing phases of possession defensively. So they wanted the game scrappy, and I think they made it scrappy, and it sort of saved some of their defensive frailties because they made it scrappy. A lot of niggly fouls, anything to stop France getting into their flow. Because if the game had flowed like the Sweden-Germany game did in the group stage, Germany would lose this by a cricket score. They decided stay structured with a good, tight, compact formation. So France was still getting wide, but Germany just stuck one up front, and everyone else just 9 players basically. Well, yeah, 8 players with one up front, with plus the goalkeeper makes 10. 8 players just stayed in 2 banks of 4, in square little boxes of 4 players, little triangles, and then they just did a zonal thing. And in those zones, they would tackle, they would disrupt, they would block the passing lanes, and they stayed in that structure. Even so, Cascarino had her goal ruled out for offside. And this was a brilliant bit of interplay with the French. Finally worked out a way to move the ball quickly, pass around these defensive block shapes, and it's put in the net after 40 minutes, and it's a toe offside. And this is where I think we need a change to the offside rule. It's got to be clear gap between attacker and defender. And I think with the introduction of VAR, with that benefit of the doubt going to the attacker being removed, and now it is black and white, when you're that far offside, a toe offside, that to me is not an advantage. The fact that Germany defended that phase of play really badly, they have been bailed out and rewarded for bad defending by the attacker being a toe offside. That for me is not what the offside rule was worded at in the past, and that's how it's been interpreted. That's how it was interpreted for 140 years before VAR. Suddenly, in the last decade or so, we've got VAR experimental rules a couple of years ago, and then we get the 2017 women's tournament, we get the 2018 men's tournament, and we start seeing these experimental rules, right? And VAR being implemented in the last decade. And the interpretation of offside had been the same all the way up until 2017, 2018, 2019, and then suddenly we're seeing the variations on it and the tweaks to it constantly. And I think we need a re-evaluation of what offside is, because that, to me, that is not an advantage to the attacker. We're not giving the benefit of the doubt to the attacker like we used to. We are too rigid with it, because a lot of people are going, that is not offside, that is still in line, both players' bodies are in line, and we're talking a toe offside. It's brilliant interplay with the French. That was probably their best bit of play in the game, but it's ruled offside, so we have to accept that. So at half time it's 1-1. The French are dominating the possession, they're creating a lot of chances, but they're also being wasteful, and Germany are sticking in there. They're making it scrappy. They're not allowing France to get into their rhythm, and the French are also just being sloppy. Now, after half time, this continues. French dominate possession, completed passes, opportunities. Berger's pulling off a lot of saves, and one of the best saves of the tournament takes place in extra time from Katarina Berger in the German goal. Brilliant save in extra time. But Gaiorio has a goal ruled out for offside. Now this is where, yes, this one is offside. Great, well-worked set play. Berger makes the initial save. The ball is loose. There is another player offside. Now, while she doesn't make contact with Berger, Berger clears up the rebound and slaps it out. Gaiorio, smashes the ball home. But because there is a player in an offside position in the phase of play, in the goalkeeper's eye line, even though she doesn't actually make contact with Berger, the goalkeeper, it's still putting that physical pressure upon the goalkeeper, even though the goalkeeper still gets to the ball, makes that secondary clearance save. And she's not actually physically impeding the keeper. It's that threat of getting in the way and getting in the goalkeeper's eye line. We've seen these given offside constantly since the introduction of VAR. That is a fair goal chalked off. The French cannot complain about that one. They can complain about the first one a little bit, but at the same time, with how the offside rule's been interpreted with VAR, it is what it is. Now, with the French having this goal chalked off, that's the second one, they should be 3-1 up. Game out of sight, Germany done, very similar to the Sweden game. You would have thought if that second goal stood and that third goal stood, Germany would have imploded. They still looked defensively vulnerable when France got it right. When France were getting balls into the box and balls in behind, and they were creating, Germany did look vulnerable, and they were starting to tire as well. But long ball punted up the other end, a foul, silly foul, in the box. Nushkin steps up for the penalty, and this is where France, being sloppy, being wasteful, could have been undone by a smash and grab. And Nushkin steps up for the penalty and misses on 69 minutes. And you're thinking, okay, Germany have done really well defensively. They've got that opportunity from a set play. They haven't taken it. It's a good save by the goalkeeper. It's not the worst penalty. It's accurate. It's on target. Keeper guesses right. But even with keepers guessing right, they can still get on the ball and it still go in. Good, solid push away from the goal by the keeper. And you're thinking that was Germany's chance to do the smash and grab, because they were looking very tired at this point, and we've still got a long way to go in the game. And France would continue to, be wasteful at the other end. Berger would continue to make saves. We go to extra time, and again, much the same. Berger would continue to make saves in extra time. The best save of the tournament, though, cross comes into the box. It's a defensive header that goes wrong by Minga, the German captain. It loops back towards the goal. It's almost a perfect header going to the other way. Berger's off her line, and that save to claw it out. I mean, we've seen some highlight reel saves in the men's game, like Pepe Reina back in the day, David Seaman back in the day, doing similar saves in league games. But that is an absolutely fantastic save. The goalkeeper that save reminded me of was Ochoa, the Mexican goalkeeper from previous World Cups. He's pulled off some saves like that. Guillermo Ochoa, the former Mexican international goalkeeper. That's what Berger's save reminds me of. And that, I think, has just kept Germany's in the tournament. Not the penalty shootout and the save in the penalty shoot, the two saves in the penalty shootout. But that save. Because if that goes in, I think Germany, their heads would have dropped. I don't think they would have had a comeback after that. At the end of the day, it finishes 1-1 after extra time. France had been wasteful, very wasteful. Germany were leggy. And I mean, France made changes earlier. The German coach made his changes later, which was a dangerous game to play, considering how exhausted, quite frankly, some of the German players looked. Some of the German players were at walking pace. Absolutely at walking pace at the end of the game. They couldn't get out of their half. They were out there on their feet. They were still trying to keep that defensive structure, but the French players have got more energy about them. And you could see it was definitely physically the Germans were tired. Mentally, I mean, look, they both sets of players are tired at this point. Goes to penalties. Berger saves the first French penalty. Germany get their first 3 penalties in. France score their next 5. Germany miss their 4th penalty. It hits the bar. They do score their next 3, including the winning penalty. France's last penalty is saved by Berger. So Berger saves 2 of France's penalties. So France score 5 out of 7 penalties. Germany scores 6 out of 7. And France have a shocking record in penalty shootouts in the women's game at international level. Shocking record. Makes England's record look fantastic. I honestly do say this. France's record in the women's game in penalty shootouts is atrocious. And that is yet another penalty shootout where they've lost. And we are including all nations that have participated at this tournament. That includes if they have to go to a playoff during qualifying, anything like that. France have had and continue to have the worst record in penalty shootouts. And that is going to continue. That's something that's going to haunt them. Germany, obviously, we know their record in penalty shootouts in both the men's and women's international games. They're through to play Spain. They're going to have to play a lot better if they're going to beat Spain. I will stress that. Their discipline has got to massively improve. Massively improve. On the France side of things, there's going to be a lot of questions over the squad selection, leaving out experienced players like Wendy Renard, for example, and Le Sommer, who were left out of the squad. That was questioned in the French media. There's going to be a dissection of this performance and why they've crashed out at this stage, considering they were so dominant in the group stage. Germany, they need to clean up that discipline. They really do. Nushkin is going to be suspended. Hendrick, who's not even the first choice, right back, is going to be suspended. I think they're on their 5th choice right back going into the semi-final against Spain. They've run out of right back. In fact, they're running out of players because of these suspensions and injuries, because there's a few other players who've gone down injured. But this is 3 players suspended for Germany now. which is a massive problem. And Nushkin has been one of their better players, and you lose that goal scoring, which Nushkin has provided. You lose that, and Germany aren't like freewheeling scoring goals here at this tournament. They're not, and so they're not scoring enough. And defensively, they've been suspect. Discipline-wise, they've not been good. But in a key pressure cooker environment, they showed they had a bit more mental nous about them following going down to 10 players than the French. They showed more composure under pressure in the penalty shootout. They did a backs to the walls job. They broke up France's momentum. They made it difficult, but they're going to have to play a lot better. They cannot play like that against Spain and hope to get to the final. It's just not going to happen. I think Spain would have wanted a penalty. These two sides go out to time in penalties. Much like Italy are probably going to be fresher than England, for example, because England, again, against Sweden, extra time in penalties. So that's something to bear in mind, that I think the final was most likely Spain-Italy, because they're going to be fresher going into their semi-finals because they got the business done in the 90 minutes. So we'll see what happens in the semi-finals, but Germany, much improvement is required on the discipline front. And defensive front especially. They can do a smash and grab with like a 1-0 if they defend well and stay disciplined, but if they're ill-disciplined and lose their defensive shape, they're in trouble. But there we go. France-Germany has ended, one of the more controversial games at this year's Euros. France should have won that. France should have won that game. There's going to be a massive inquest back in the French media and back home in France with that defeat. But there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts on the game in the comment section below. I'll have some more content for you all very, very soon.